The future is what you make it. Thank you, dear hero, for giving of your time to vote. I'm Matthew Heines, and for you, a poem I wrote. It's about why you should check the box next to my name. That way, things will never be the same. In 2018, I ran on my plan called Real Deal. We were facing so many problems, it would make a nun steal. Since that time, Congress has stabbed us in our backs, making a bonanza for dirty lawyers and their political hacks. Politicians put on puppet shows to justify their existence, while the hateful media covers up their malfeasance. Of all we suspected before, we know now to be true. If you ain't got no money, America don't care about you. The rich use racism, keeping the working poor in check, with hateful media, low wages, and never-ending debt. They manipulate you by pictures, songs, and false words. But when the election is over, your voice is not heard. Thanks to this virus, you got poorer, while the rich took it all. They live in splendor, your back's against the wall. They make you wear masks and stay kenneled like dogs, while they sit in their mansions doing interviews with hogs. These politicians, they love to talk about their money. They show you their ice cream, and they think that's funny. Well, I'm Matthew Heines, and I'm running for Congress. As a teacher all my life, I had to make do with less. To the millionaire incumbent, we all have just one thing to say. You've done enough damage. Now get out of our way. The future's what we make it, but we must read the signs. This sign says, "Great future ahead if you vote for Heines." Matthew D. Heines, U.S. House of Representatives Campaign 2020. Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Heines, and I'm here to talk to you briefly about my run for the United States House of Representatives. Now, the results have come in. It's about a week after the election, and right now, my results are completely shocking. So I'm going to start off by saying that. Through the entire election, from the very beginning, watching an app called iVote, I considered myself that to be the leader almost by a landslide throughout the election. And why would I think that? Well, I would think that because I'm the most qualified candidate, I'm a teacher, I'm a veteran, and I have a background in history. I've lived and worked overseas. I have a lot of international experience. And furthermore, I know what's wrong with this country, and I think I can bring people together to help fix that. So I'm going to talk to you today about the results of my election, and I'm going to talk to you about what I think happened, what went wrong, and why is this important? It's important because, number one, you may yourself want to run for office. So if you can see the mistakes that I made and the positive things that I did, you can decide where you want to fall in those parameters. Now, if you just want to jump onto the coattails of who the media calls a legitimate candidate, then you are also, welcome to do that too. And as you'll see, you may have a little bit more success. But let's just go over, first, let's go over the results of the campaign. I want to talk to you first of all about the incumbent. The incumbent got, at the last count, I believe, 126,000 votes. Now, this is out of a total voters. I'll flash the total amount of voters on the screen. And then the runner-up got less than 100,000 votes. And then when you get down to the independents, which I am, I took second place behind a person that I've never heard of. I don't know how they managed to get so many votes with no campaign signs. I put my campaign signs all over the district. I saw one campaign sign from this guy. So how he got so many votes is interesting and might be in my next book. Okay, the first thing that you have to realize running as an independent is that there is no way, unless you pay for it, you're going to get any media coverage. Especially today when you have the media, which is owned by the same people, putting or pitting the conservatives against the liberals and doing it all just so they can sell advertising and keep you watching either on Fox News or CNN, depending on where your sympathies lie. Now, if you're an independent like myself, you're not going to get any coverage, especially depending on what your programs that you're espousing are. So that was the first challenge that I ran into, was that with no money, I was going to have no media coverage. I knew they were going to basically blacklist me, and I found that out when I first started running. When I asked Como TV out of Seattle if they wanted to do an interview, they just kind of laughed. Ha, you didn't pay for it. Why would we interview you? So that brings up what my strategy was. And my main strategy was I needed to be as different from the other candidates as possible. In fact, I needed to be like the anti-candidate. I need to be so different that people would say, oh, I'm going to take a look at that guy. So the other drawback of being an independent, along with not having money, not having media coverage, is time. Because when you're an independent, and I ran this campaign by myself, and I come from a background where the people that I grew up with and the people around me, most of them don't even vote. So I couldn't depend on like my friends or anybody for any real support. Now, when the election was over and I didn't win, well, I got a lot of support then. But while we were actually during the election, I really did not get hardly any support in one way or another from my friends, although I did get a few campaign contributions from my family, but it really wasn't there. So that's another challenge of running as an independent, is people go, well, you're sure not going to win as an independent, so why would I even support you? The other thing that is a challenge as an independent is Republicans and Democrats hold fundraisers, and they invite people to speak, and they have different events. Well, if you're an independent, you get invited to no events. So that was another big challenge that I had. I wasn't invited any place where I could actually talk to people and convince them to vote for me. In this election, the media, which, as I said, is owned by the same people, is really trying to polarize the country. So that means that they're either going to be scared into voting for a Democrat, or they're going to be scared into voting for a Republican. They're not going to risk a vote or whatever on somebody that doesn't fall into the things that they see on TV. Now, it could be very cynical to say this, but there is some credibility to the saying monkey see, monkey do. And the key here is that if you're going to run as an independent, you really have to get your message out into the media, and you really have to really do it in a big way, because otherwise, with the money that's being spent and with the level of the Democratic machine in Washington State, you really would have to get a message out there, and to get that message out there is going to cost money. With all of these limitations, what were my strategies? Now, the first thing that I wanted to do was, I had a very limited budget. With a very limited budget, what can you do? Well, you don't get anything for free, so the only thing you can really do to get free publicity so far, and I say this with a caveat, as we'll see, but the only thing you can do is buy campaign signs. And you know, these annoying campaign signs you see everywhere, well, that's really your only exposure to the voters. So when I was doing my designing my campaign sign, the first thing I wanted to do was make sure I designed a campaign sign that would not get torn down. Now, I didn't have the money to buy 1,000 campaign signs and put them up every 50 meters across the countryside. I bought 200 campaign signs, and as we'll see, most of those went together. So I had to strategically place my campaign signs, and I had to make sure, because with just me, what am I'm supposed to drive all throughout the district? I put 2,000 miles on my car and 1,000 miles on my truck just picking up and putting out campaign signs. It's just not practical with such a small operation to have campaign signs that people are going to tear down. So I put Voto Matteo on my signs because I wanted to be different. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was, I figured if I present myself as somebody who is supporting the Hispanic community as one of my programs and supporting them and giving them rights as laborers and workers, I figured they would support me. Now, the next thing I wanted to do, as far as my strategy was I wanted to motivate non-traditional voters. Now, as we see, there are this many voters in the 1st District in Washington State. The incumbent won by just this many votes. All I had to do was motivate those people that weren't traditionally going to come out and vote. Now, this is all with the caveat that this is a fair election, and I'm not even going to get into this right now, but there are questions that people would have to ask, like how did the other independent get so many votes when he didn't even put out a campaign sign? Were my votes shifted to him? Who knows? I'm not getting into that right now, but I'm just saying that I wanted to motivate non-traditional voters through the use of Spanish on my campaign signs. And I also wanted to motivate non-traditional voters by being the candidate that they would vote for, that they would be looking for, a veteran, a working class individual, somebody who's going to protect their interests and the interests of their children as far as education goes. Now, to battle the fact that I don't have the money, that I don't have the resources, I don't have the staff, I don't have the support, what I really tried to do was to be the anti-candidate. I wanted to be so different from everybody else that people would have no choice. Well, I don't want to say no choice, but they wouldn't even think twice. This guy is so qualified. He is so anti-system. He is so outside the system. He is so independent. Why would we not put somebody like this who's protecting our interests in Congress? Well, that strategy, you just look at the results to decide whether or not that worked. So my next strategy was use brains and not bucks. I am a thinking individual, and everything that I've talked about so far really reflects the fact that I didn't have a lot of money. Everything I did had to be thought out, and it had to be strategically done so that I could get more bang for my bucks, because I was using brains and not bucks. The last thing that I did as far as my strategy goes was to get the voter, if I hadn't reached them with the campaign signs, or I also did YouTube videos and Facebook, but of course as a reasonably conservative candidate, Facebook completely would not let me advertise as a political candidate. And of course, YouTube and Google, well, of course, what do they do? Shadow ban you or something? But I have no views I put out like 30 videos as part of my strategy. And I have like 19 subscribers. So, and very few views. So it's not like I was featured views for YouTube. So, with that, as another obstacle against me, that was just another reason that I thought, well, I'll use poetry. And when people go to see me on the voter's pamphlet, ex-paratrooper, teacher, experience in Saudi Arabia, Oman, author of so many books, independent businessman, independent candidate, they would have no choice but to vote for me. Well, that didn't happen, and why that didn't happen is really up for you to decide. We've been talking about some of the reasons why it may have happened or may not happened. So, with all of that being said, I want to make sure that I tell everybody I appreciate your support. Again, I was shocked that I did not win this election. So, will I run again? Right now, I'm not going to say. This election was so weird, was so strange. I have so much material for books right now that I'm just getting going on books. So if you want to follow the campaign, you can stay. I'll keep voteforheines.com. I'll keep it up. And as things progress, I will post if I'm going to run again, and if I'm going to speak at any events or whatever. Just go to Vote for Heines every now and then, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube if you want to stay up with current events. And of course, like my videos, so someday YouTube will pay attention. But anyway, will I run again? Well, the fact of the matter is, what I did was an initial thing. In politics, it's all about name recognition. So right now, I made the first step. And it's a question of, will I take the second step? And that's going to be a question that's going to be answered, in 2 years from now. And that's a question that's going to be answered this time or next time by you and by not me. Because if I don't have the interest to run again, I'm certainly not going to waste my time doing it. Because just talking and looking at this stuff is a gold mine right there. So, there it is. I'm Matthew Heines. This is the official end of the 2020 campaign for United States Congress in the 1st Congressional District. Is this the first video in the 2022 campaign? Well, only hindsight is gonna tell.
My name is Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state.
Congressman Susan DelBene has been in office since 2012. Using her substantial financial resources, thanks to Microsoft, and her $84 million fortune, she has been able to continually maintain an office where people still have little idea what she's done. Well, she's learned to dance around, and she's learned to do all the political maneuvers you have to do to keep getting reelected. Well, Susan DelBene, it's time for you to go.